Later, he adopted a daughter, Paula, and attempted to make her a child star, using her in some of his commercials. After your father adopted you, I gather he tried to use you in some commercials when you were very young.
The only one that actually came off was the Chivers jelly, where I just sat in a high chair and spread jelly over myself and onto the floor, as babies do, and that one was actually shown.
I believe there was also a Dulux ad.
Well, that didn't actually reach the screens because while we were doing the stills for it, I broke down because of the dog. It was just too big. I was only 18 months old at the time, so I don't really remember it, though I don't get on with dogs.
Cameraman Maurice Onions, who called Sproat the only filmmaker of genius to come out of Shropshire, a backhanded compliment this as he came from Cheshire, photographed his first colour film, St. Augustine, the story of a bicycle thief who has his career jeopardised when someone steals his bolt cutters. The film was an immense success and featured Pope Pius XII in a cameo role as a bike mechanic. At last Hollywood beckoned, and Sproat was set to direct the remake of Robert Lord's Brother Rat. Sadly for Sproat, differences with the star, Clark Gable, it is rumoured he tried to staple gun Gable's ears to his head, led to his return to England. While others made films appropriate to the optimism of the Festival of Britain, Sproat made 8 female rugby players jump from a glider into the River Thames, a work that even his greatest admirers find unparalleled in its boredom. It lasts 12 hours and consists solely of this one shot, slightly out of focus. The rugby players never appear.
Love, love me do. You know I love you. I'll always be true. So please, love me do. Oh, love me do.
With the swinging 60s came a glut of dollars, and Sproat was rescued from newsreels to make the brilliant but totally scholarly Documents of Charles Darwin. Entrepreneur Nat Clark, appalled, cut in outtakes from other 60s films and released it in Australia as Carry On Evolving. Sproat used his fees to make A Lump of Sugar for Barry, a documentary about the Metropolitan Police Force horses, which came to grief when Sproat was nearly killed shooting the traffic control sequences in Grosvenor Square. Sproat can be seen here, in the blue anorak by the tree. It seems any rationality he might have possessed had now disappeared as he threw himself into the bizarre Trains on the Northern Line, to which he linked the Muslim culture with laundrettes. This too was never finished and led to his bankruptcy in 1970.
None of the other people in the house spoke to me. After a while, I tried to talk to Solomon.
You were presumably given your name because it is an anagram of cinema.
Well, that was actually only my nickname. They christened me Paula when they adopted me.
How would you describe your father in those last few years?
Well, the last few years he was a bit of a bastard.
How did he manage? So how did he manage financially in those last few years?
After his bankruptcy, well, the Dame had to go out and work again, obviously. Dame Kate Minch, my mother, and she's not been dead that long. She supported him.
She died tragically a little while ago, didn't she? Rumour has it she was... Yes, the bike crash. Father at that time was doing lecture tours, am I right?
Until the crash, yes, that's how he
for about 5 years, that's all he did.
That's the only money that came in, was from him.
Rumour has it at the time of the crash she was commuting between 2 of her lovers.
Do I have to answer that sort of question?
Excuse me. And eventually, whatever we do know that through the use of her life insurance policy, he was able to finance his final film, Follow Him.
Yeah, and that's when things really started to go downhill, actually.
Miss Galanti, how active was your husband in those last few years?
Well, not very active, actually. He was asleep most of the time.
And in this period, he delegated much of his work to assistant directors?
Yes. He always did, as a matter of fact. Eric's assistants were the best. They did all the work on Follow Him, for example.
But the idea itself was Sproat's alone, I'm sure.
Yes, the theme was his. Who else would make a film with all those T-shirts and in London, really?
True to say that there was absolutely no studio shooting at all during that film.
Indeed, yes. He preferred location catering.
I see.
And he said to me that there wasn't a cook in a London studio who could make a good white sauce.
How great an impact do you think he had on British cinema?
Well, as far as I could tell, not much really, but he was very misunderstood.
I understand that he died very tragically and very suddenly.
Yes, it was very sudden. It was while he was repairing this kitchen blender that he died.
I see. This seems to be something of a theme throughout his life, electricity.
Electricity, yes. He never could quite grasp the concept.
And so the man once described by the noted French cineast Maurice Sardou as l'imbécile du cinéma anglais rests in peace. For a final word on Sproat, we attempted to contact his twin sons. There was no reply from the Venezuelan Office of Film Censorship, where Paul Sproat is said to work. When we approached the other Paul Sproat, we were unable to obtain any comment. He has taken a vow of silence and lives and works at a Cistercian monastery somewhere in the south of England. We have been asked not to reveal where. We did, however, receive a handwritten letter in which he intimated to us that if we could be instrumental in obtaining for him any of the monies which he feels are still owed to him, he would be only too happy to pass them on to those in greater need. The Electric Cinemas Festival does not begin for some months, but fans were already queuing for advance tickets.
What do you think of Eric Sproat's films?
Dreadful. To sum up in one word, different.
Eccentric.
Absolutely unbelievable. He was a genius. Wonderful. I like the way Staple Clark Gable's ears to his head.
It is tragic that a lifetime's work could end this way. Doubly so when it is realised that Sproat's work could soon be lost to us forever, following the National Film Archive's decision not to preserve any of his work. Ironically, his final, unfilmed script could be the one to bring him the attention he deserved, Sophia Loren's Eyebrows. Miss Galante has reportedly described the dance of the insulating tape as something to make the Leather Brigade sit up and beg. Perhaps then this humble potato will be returned from the obscurity into which it was thrust and will gain the attention it deserves.